Coming to you from Israel and the Galilee. Uh, and what's today? The 28th of June. It's about, I don't know, let's see, 28th, and it's about 10 minutes after 8, 28th of June. Okay, our weather, what's going on? 78 degrees, so it's hot, and 93 high, and it's not nice. Probably have to put the air conditioning on in here in a while. Um, we're going to cover some things that's going on with Trump and America, and with Iran. Okay, so what happened is the fighting broke out again yesterday for the second day in a row. So I think it's safe to say that America and Iran are back at a limited warfare level. Um, and we'll cover what was hit. Yes, Iran hit American bases, Bahrain and Kuwait. They went after those two. They didn't start with Israel because they know that they start with Israel a few hours later. Bomb, 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 Iran, bomb, bomb, bomb. They're gonna Netanyahu's gonna unload on them, not the way Trump does. He's gonna unload on them massively. You know, he'd probably, I would think, minimally a couple of hundred bombs. You know, he doesn't play with them. In that regard, he's good, but is he really doing it for Israel? Or is he really doing it because he hates their guts because they've made his life so miserable over the years? That's a good question. Do I know the answer to it? Not for sure, no. So I just posed the question and I'm not sure the answer. So let me go into the live stream and take a look at what's going on. And it looks good. And look at what's going on. And it looks good. Sound and picture. Thank you, moderator. And I'm going to put a post up, which is rather quick. Not going to be a long time. Very quick, actually. Almost done. Let me check for typos. We're good. Let me pin this up. Make sure we got it. And we got it. We're looking good. It looks like we got it. Okay, close this out. Being a Bible believing site, like many other people claim to be, I actually do praise to the Lord and Yeshua before we start. And then I'll do a prayer for the broadcast. Okay. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay, I'm going to do a prayer before we start for the broadcast and all that. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I come to you for a good program today, good understanding of the people, good conveyance of information, and everybody grasps it and understands it, especially the Bible work we're going to do. Uh, and I submit this to you, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. We're going to do Romans 6 and 7. We're going to translate it from the two Hebrew New Testaments, which is Salkinson and Delich. And we're going to have them, and I'm going to have both, and I'm going to go through it with you. And I think you're really going to have some really serious oohs and ahs, especially pertaining to everlasting life and tying it with baptism. Oh, you're going to have a good time. Okay, but we got to do the watching, and we got to get into what's going on. But we also have a few prayer requests today, and that is very important to the people. I think I did this yesterday, but I'd like to do it again because this person is a rather brand new mom and having trouble. So the name of the person we want to toss and break any and all witchcraft emanating from this person or from other people on the behalf of this person. So the target for the spiritual warfare is VK, Victor Kilo. You want to toss and you want to cancel the witchcraft and sorcery that this person ever did. Okay? And that's that. Okay. That's a good one. All right, next. This is for RG, Romeo Girl, RG, Romeo Girl, and family. The prayer is that they have a great vacation and they have a good traveler's prayer for their vacation. Everything works out with the traveling and the accommodations and no lost or misplaced luggage or anything like that, or reservations that fall apart or anything lost or stolen. Those are the traveler's prayers. We'll be doing another one for somebody in a minute. And, a good round trip journey for their vacation. And they're asking also for prayer for no bad bugs. There's apparently some type of bad bugs possibly near there. So I'll go through it one more time. It's for RG Romeo Golf and the family. They're going on a vacation and they have a really good vacation and they have a good time with each other, and the traveler's prayer, they don't have any messed up reservations, lost things, luggage problems, or travel problems, or anything like that. And they have a good journey going to the vacation and returning, and they have no problem with nasty bugs in the vacation site. Okay, so these things are important. Now we have one other one. This is for EB and JC and family. So it's for Echo Bravo and Jack Charlie and family. Echo Bravo, EB, JC, Jack Charlie, and family. A traveler's prayer. They're taking a big round trip road, a big road trip coming and going, and we want to pray they don't have any breakdowns or any accidents or lost things or misplaced things or messed up reservations or any problems. Traveler's prayer for EB, JC, and family. Round trip. Okay, there you go. That is it. Now we will get into. Now, if you're, watching this as a video, by all means, you can still join in the prayers with everybody else, and please do. Okay, So the Central Command, which overlooks the American military forces in the Middle East, confirms that they were doing fresh strikes on Iran after it attacked a commercial oil tanker with a drone. This is the second ship they attacked, not the first one. This is an additional one. They attacked it with a drone. They are definitely operating like the Persian Gulf is theirs, sharing it with Oman, and they're in control. And if you don't listen to them, well, they'll kill you or try to. Nice people. Yeah, sure. In a statement, CENTCOM says Iran had been given a chance to honor the ceasefire agreement, but elected not to by attacking the ship, which followed U.S. strikes in response to a previous Iranian attack. So the thought was after they did the first attack on Iran, they wouldn't attack the second ship. But Trump still hasn't figured out that he's dealing with psychotic, delusional leaders of a lunatic land, Iran. CENTCOM is saying the latest strikes targeted Iranian military surveillance infrastructure. What does that sound like? Surveillance infrastructure, radar? Communication systems, well, that's normally not radar, radio. Um, Air defense sites, that's their feeble anti-aircraft missiles that usually don't do much good, but they are a harassment, but they don't really create a lot of damage. And drone storage facilities and mine layer capabilities. What's a mine layer capability? A mine, the ship, probably not the ship, maybe the ship, some equipment that probably responsible to lay the mines. I think they only have something like 40 or something mines out there. Not, they don't have like 200 or 300 or anything. So then our friends in Iran, yeah, friends like that we don't need, right? Iran fired drones at Bahrain and also hit the oil tanker. Um, and um, the Iranians played a game and announced they denounced, they kicked against brutal attacks by the United States, blatant violation of agreement. Uh, it's just, it's Iran never does anything wrong, and everybody else does things wrong. When they had their police on the roof sniping women protesters a few months ago, they were right. I mean, the women were protesting. The nerve of them! Shoot them dead in the street. Babies too. Who cares? That's them. The United States aircraft first struck the missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites for violating the ceasefire agreement. Again, it is very possible that they will never learn. There may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic I don't have the rest of it. I imagine it means they'll go down. That was Trump, I believe. So um, he's still using restraint, and they know it. He's not really going to war with them, and they know it. And they're afraid of Netanyahu because they know Netanyahu is going to take the gloves off and just bomb the daylights out of them. They hit Bahrain first, then they hit Kuwait. Uh, their air defenses were working to bring down these things. Um, I'm unsure if any missiles or drones got in. That information is usually not revealed because generally something gets in. They're not Israel. They're not using David's sling, Iron Dome, Iron Beam, and everything, SADs and everything else. Possibly a coup. Okay, this is interesting, and this is reasonably well confirmed. I would call this confirmed. In Iraq, in the what do they call it? The Green Zone. Um, there was armored vehicles and gunfire. They were going in and arresting members of the parliament, and they tend to live in the Green Zone near the American embassy. Um, we're getting now. This is not confirmed. There might have been a coup threat by the Sunnis, which were probably fueled from the Sunnis in Syria next door. And they could have been putting this down that way. But why were they going after members of the parliament unless they were behind the coup? So the coup part is no confirmation. The arresting of parliament members and shooting in the Green Zone, yes, that's confirmed. Now, some of you don't like it when I talk poorly about Trump being, well, lost his marbles, you know. He is not in contact with Tinkerbell. He's not that far gone. He just lost his marbles. Okay. There is no Tinkerbell. And I don't believe Trump thinks there's a Tinkerbell. But I do believe he thinks the demons are gods. Okay. So, um, Trump came out with, I mean, this is even hard to believe. Okay, what I'm going to tell you is real. I saw pictures of it. Trump came out with a limited edition passport that people can get, not privately from the United States State Department. These are coming from the official United States State Department, and it's a passport, and it has Trump's picture in it to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America. He put his picture in the passport. When they come up with, and I'm pretty sure they will, come up with a $200 or $500 bill, um, I wouldn't be surprised to see Trump's picture on it. They usually do dead presidents. They call it jokingly Dead Presidents Collection. In that regard, maybe Trump would put Obama and Biden on there. All right. So, if any of you wanted one, you could go to the State Department, and I guess they would order you one, and then when it came, your other passport would probably be deactivated or something. I don't know how you do that. All right. the image shows Trump with a nasty face, not snarling, but you know, uh, with his fists on the desk, and the Declaration of Independence in the background, and his signature below. The only word I can have for this is marbles, and they're lost. In the actual follow up to the Peter Pan story with Robin Williams, done around 1993 or something like that, 91, maybe 92, he played Peter Pan who left Neverland, and Wendy left, and Wendy helped raise Peter Pan, and Peter Pan became a corporate lawyer and forgot all about Neverland, and because he left Neverland, he was aging. And Wendy was aging. And Wendy wanted him to go back, and I guess Tinkerbell came for a visit, and they needed him to go back because Captain Hook captured the lost boys. And at some point in time, the old guy that was a kid who lost his marbles and went back to London and grew old, he found his marbles. He was still crazy, but he did find his marbles. But if that's of any interest to you, uh, Peter Pan. All right. Who's Captain Hook in this deal anyway? If we got Peter Pan losing his marbles, I'd have to pin Khomeini on Captain Hook. In the Robin Williams version, Dustin Hoffman played Captain Hook, and he did nothing short of a fantastic job. It was like a 9 on a 10 scale. He was superb at it. So yeah, we could refer to the Khomeini as Captain Hook. Yeah. And Trump lost his marbles. Okay. Netanyahu he states publicly that Iran and Hezbollah have no role in Lebanon, and they don't. It's none of their business. The official Lebanon government wants Iran out of their lives, and they want Hezbollah out of their lives. They're taking away the country, and they probably will take it away. Now, the only one that's really going to likely get upset if they take it away is Netanyahu. Netanyahu will probably go in and fight against Hezbollah because he doesn't want Hezbollah to run Lebanon proper. If they do, then they'll get the military equipment from the Lebanese army, which is very limited anyway, but it's something we don't need. Them running around with a bunch of tanks and ancient aircraft, and it's not serious, but it's a problem. So he'll definitely join in, and anytime the Iranians get a conquest of any artillery or tanks or anything, armored vehicles, he'll blow them up. And there might be an excuse for us to fight them. Would Trump go in and fight them? I'll give you 50-50 on that one. If the Lebanese government asks Trump to go in, Trump's first knee-jerk reaction would be to go to the UN Security Council, file a motion there for the Security Council to take action and actually get a resolution where the UN goes and saves Lebanon. I don't know what China and Russia would do. They might allow this to happen, and they might just tell Iran, "We're doing this because you shouldn't have pushed it that far. You got enough on your plate in the middle without Lebanon. Cut it out." And they might let it happen, or not. I don't know. So it would probably, I couldn't tell you. They might let it go through, and it would be just a way of telling Iran, now you got some time, so get the heck out of there and let Hezbollah deal with it themselves. And hard to say what Iran would do. Iran may say no and send a bunch of troops there, and then what? Well, then the UN wipes them out. Is that how this thing ends? It's a possibility. I wouldn't say I'm sure this would happen, but yeah, it could. It could. It very likely could happen, but I wouldn't lean on planning on that, no. The member of the Lebanese parliament that belongs to Hezbollah, they have seats in the parliament, not a majority, said that they are ignoring this deal between Lebanon and Israel. So they are no longer really, Hezbollah no longer wants to pay attention to the Lebanese government as the government of Lebanon, meaning they don't want to be responsible to it, to the Lebanese government. There'll be a revolution there, and it's a chance that Trump will go in with Israel, or he might ask Israel to stay out because it will infuriate Iran. And he might go in, but that's going to encourage way more bases on the way more attacks on the American bases, way more attacks at shipping, so more fighting with Iran. But Trump may go in. What Trump and the UN Security Council are afraid of is Israel goes in instead of Trump and America. And then Israel, winds up staying. Okay. Ben-Gvir, that's the two right-wing people in the Netanyahu coalition are Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. Ben-Gvir runs the police inside Israel as one of his minister jobs, and he is slamming the deal that Netanyahu made as a major mistake, and he wants Netanyahu to hold a cabinet meeting and put this to a vote. See, Netanyahu didn't do that, and he won't do that because the cabinet would likely just say they have no interest in this deal and be very nice and tell the Americans that we always want to hear what they have to say, and we respect your opinions, and we love you, but we're not doing this. Whereas Netanyahu didn't really do it either, but he did it in part. Okay. So Netanyahu is absolutely not going to hold a cabinet vote, as far as I can tell. Okay. I mean, it could happen. I highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. He runs like a dictator. In other words, he makes believe that the Supreme Court's irrelevant. He's the executive branch of the democracy, and the legislative branch is nice, but I'm not going to listen to them, or the judicial branch. That's, Netanyahu's a curse. In my opinion, he's a curse on Israel. Okay. The problem runs like this. This is headlines in the papers in Israel today. The Trump administration struck contra, two clashing deals. The Israel-Lebanon deal and the U.S.-Iran deal. They have contradictions. That's Trump lost his marbles. They got contradictions. The two deals are backed by the Trump administration, and they're both different and disagree with each other. It's amazing that Trump did that, but he did it. Um, the agreements are likely to cancel each other out in practice by Iran, and that's what we're seeing right now. Iran is not a happy camper, and Trump, Iran is saying America broke the ceasefire, so now we're taking control of the Persian Gulf and charging tolls, and it's under our control. And Trump is basically telling them never going to happen, and there you go. Iran said they're starting it because Trump violated the ceasefire. Well, you see, it's impossible for Trump to adhere to the Lebanon, Iran, U.S. deal. Okay. Now we got another problem with this jackass Netanyahu. I told you yesterday that the Haredi, the ultra Orthodox, were dealing very harshly with females. They were the mothers of soldiers protesting in Bnei Brak, which is their neighborhood, right outside of Tel Aviv. The ultra, the ultra Orthodox were hitting them. The women, ultra Orthodox men, because the women were doing it in their neighborhood. And the police were there and just stood there and watched the women get pushed around by the men. Now, why did Ben Gvir allow this? Police answer to Ben Gvir, we don't know yet. Chances are Netanyahu managed to get it done somehow. Now, the scary thing is if the police, for political reasons, will stand around while women get beaten up by the ultra-Orthodox, we are not in a democracy anymore. Do you understand that? The theme here is the ultra Orthodox control approximately 15 votes out of 120. Netanyahu needs 61 votes on October 27th to win prime ministership for another 4 years. Okay? How does this work? He needs their votes. He can't get any kind of laws passed that we've seen yet that give them the right to not go in the military and just go to yeshiva. But Netanyahu is most likely telling the ultra-Orthodox, I can't do it this term, I'll do it next term. But I will stop all the attempts to force the people, to stop you guys, your people, from going to jail for not abiding by the draft, which the Supreme Court of Israel wanted to know why Netanyahu's not enforcing the draft. Well, I doubt he ever answered them. What are they going to do? How are they going to go after Netanyahu? See, he doesn't operate like it's a democracy. That's the problem. One of the problems. It's wrong for the police to stand around while these men hit women, okay? That's somebody taking a side in the freedom of protest, and that's a right in a democracy, and it's a right in Israel. The ultra-Orthodox go around and close the highways. That's not a right of theirs. These women just stood around protesting. They weren't closing anybody's highways. Something's wrong with this, you know? And why is Ben Gvir quiet? Why isn't he out there conducting an investigation? Ben Gvir and Smotrich are not in favor of the ultra-Orthodox not going in the military, as far as we know. Maybe they feel they got a better chance of doing what their constituents want them to do, the people that voted for them want them to do, with Netanyahu in office again, because if Netanyahu loses, the other ones that come in may get rid of Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And then the right wing, the ultra right wing in Israel, has nothing. They're not ultra right. They call themselves that, but they're right wing. They're not center, they're right wing. So we got a problem with Netanyahu now with this thing with the draft. I don't believe the Supreme Court can initiate a case against Netanyahu, but they could probably take action on him not implementing the draft. And I don't know why they haven't. Maybe they just figure he'll just ignore them. So Netanyahu is basically taking our democracy away from us when, for political reasons, the police are instructed to let men beat women up that are just protesting. What's up with that? The Israeli police have been finding weapons stored in and around Jerusalem, like I guess you'd call it underground aquifers, stuff to do with the water. Old underground places, I mean old. Oh, like King David old, that kind of old, stuff like that. Where the Arabs have been storing explosives and guns and ammo, stuff like that there. They also had facilities, well, they had equipment and supplies there for people to live there. Like a cot bed, and, canned water and food, I guess. Um, so that would be for those people to go out from there, shoot Jews, run away, and come back in and hide in these underground aquifers. I understand it was more than one, and I know they're going to be looking at everything now. So if they're there, they're going to be found. They were trying to terrorize Jerusalem, and directly or indirectly, Iran's behind this. Trump did not go to Iran and say, your sanctions are back. Why? Because by letting Iran distribute the oil, right, it takes the stress off the world. It does. It does. And it keeps oil prices lower. And it does. But Trump has to get his act together. You can't be their enemy and let them go around selling oil. That doesn't work. Trump thinks he can keep this war contained. Maybe. Maybe. But it's just a matter of time till somebody does a breakout. So there's a real problem with Trump here. His behavior is he doesn't really know what he wants to do. This partial fighting with Iran isn't going to do much. Trump's approach to that would be to close the bases in these Middle East countries so Iran has no target anymore. Move the bases to Israel, but these bases around the Middle East contain 50,000 or so soldiers. It's going to take a little time to build bases like that in Israel, you know. For all I know, maybe they're already setting bases up with tents or temporary housing, you know, like mobile home stuff. I don't know what they're up to. I don't know. I don't know, guys. Trump probably doesn't know what he's going to do tomorrow. As I see it, the Iranians will continue attacking shipping, without a doubt. So back to the ultra-Orthodox. The cabinet secretary, Yossi Fuchs, says that arrests of yeshiva students are pushing the Haredi away from enlistment and risk tearing Israel security apart. Netanyahu claimed police enter yeshivas to arrest Torah students, though no such case is really happening. So, you know, what do you expect Netanyahu to say? Well, I can't arrest them because I got to get reelected. No. He says, well, it's going to rip apart Israel. Well, you know, let it rip apart Israel. The ultra-Orthodox are corrupting the government, which is nothing for their own gain, which is nothing any godly person would be doing. And they don't care about anybody else but themselves. And they're bad for Israel. They're only good for themselves. They're bad for everybody else in Israel. And you can't let them continue this. Yet he will. Because he's bad for Israel. Okay, let me look at our live stream. Is that why another tanker was just bombed yesterday? Yeah. The second tanker caused another attack by America. And they'll keep attacking. They're not going to show fear of being attacked by America. That's not going to happen. So let's see what else. But Yeshua is also Jehovah. No, he's not. How could you say a thing like that? It says in Psalm 110:1, the Lord said to my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. There's your answer right there. Was he? Okay. That's a false doctrine you picked up. Jesus only theory, they call it. When it says the two are one, okay, that means in agreement. We're united in agreement. That's what that means. Thanks everybody for the greetings. All he's doing is destroying our friendship built with Kuwait and decades exports 20% of our oil. It's not doing any good. Congress is worried. I was stationed in Kuwait for some time, month, for some time, months, demonstrating our technology. I was able to tour Kuwait City, and they have military there. Yeah. The Kuwait is one of the worst pig governments in the Middle East. The father of the current leader, they call him an emir. Years ago, I'm talking, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, this piece of work, the father, I think it was every Thursday, it was either Tuesday or Thursday, I think it was Thursday, he would divorce one of his wives and marry a new one. So all he has to do is say, I divorce you. Okay. So he had mainstay wives, and then he had a rotating position, number 4 position. So he would keep the wives around for however long, I think a week, and then he'd get rid of them and get another one. So every week he had a new flesh body to have an encounter with, is what he was doing. And my understanding is he had a big mansion or some place like that that they went to live in after. So after he divorced them, he took care of them, and they went to live in this big mansion with servants and stuff like that, and they had nothing to worry about. You know, they had medical, they had food, clothing, and they hung out with each other like a harem. But he didn't, from what I know, he didn't go back there and do the deed with them anymore. So he would just load them up. I guess he didn't want them marrying anybody else. It would look bad. Does his son do that? I don't know. But they're pretty bad. You know, they're really bad people. And they're all that way. They're dictators. They call themselves like a sultan, an emir, a Khomeini, a president, a king. They use these titles, and all they are dictators. That's it. They're just dictators, period, cut and dry. And they dictate. And the ones running these countries now are the children of the grandfather and the father that were the real hardline dictators, and these are kids that grew up with a platinum spoon in their mouth, okay, and they run around trying to figure out what to do, but they're wimps. They don't want to have a war. They're afraid. They hid behind America's skirts all these years. Now Trump's not protecting them. The only way Trump could really protect them is to bomb the daylights out of Iran. And, somebody in prophecy is going to, it says enemies in the plural, are going to destroy Iran, and they all have to leave their country. So that means the grid, the electricity, and the water desalinators are cut, and then they got to leave. That's how I interpret it. Simplest way. And either Trump's going to do it or other people are going to do it. But the Iranians could care less about Trump blowing up their radar and blowing up this and blowing up that. They keep launching missiles with their missile cities. They know that Trump might attack them for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 even, but they know that eventually Trump's going to cave in. What they will do is they will hit, now we're talking about Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, they leave Oman alone, Jordan and Saudi Arabia, they will hit their oil wells, they'll hit their oil refineries, they'll hit their oil storage tanks, they'll hit their ports and piers that they use to ship the oil out, load them onto the boats, and they'll shut down the oil. So you're basically going to see about 25% of the oil not flowing, and that's going to cause a very, very high spike in prices. When you also need to add into the fact that, without a doubt, the Houthis are going to close the Red Sea and the area underneath Yemen, and that's another 7% of the oil. So you're talking about 33% of the oil isn't roughly isn't going to be going out anymore because it's all jammed up. So out of your 100 million barrels a day that the world uses, you know, roughly they're going to be down to 65 million barrels. So you've got a game of musical chairs, and the people that are going to pay the most for the oil are going to get it. So does that mean you're going to get $200 or $300 oil? Not necessarily, but I would say it means you're going to get at least $125 to $150 oil as at least. And out of fear, I would expect 200. Now, we do not know if Venezuela suffered damage to their oil production from the bad earthquakes. Let's send AI on a hunt to see if there's anything in the news about that. Did Venezuela oil industry suffer any damage from those two very large earthquakes the other day? It's saying that the Venezuela oil industry appears to have suffered only limited and localized damage, not a major disruption. Oil production has remained near 1.2 million barrels a day. Um, the reports are saying things like temporary power outages that affected the a small refinery, forcing some units to shut down, no power. Minor damages and a storage tank leak. Um, so, yeah, I can believe that. Okay, I don't think they're sandbagging us. These oil tanks that they store the oil in are built very sturdy. Remember, it was a 7.2, not an 8.7, okay? Um, they've had earthquakes roughly of that magnitude in San Francisco. Bridges broke and freeways broke and stuff like that. I think it was actually as little as a 6.9 or something, but most of San Francisco and the Bay Area was intact after that. So, yeah, I mean, I could believe it. I don't have any trouble believing it. I can certainly believe it. You know, pipelines are probably pretty resilient to an earthquake. I guess that's probably true. I mean, the big trouble you have with the earthquakes is with buildings that go up in the air. Okay, um, when you had the great earthquake in San Francisco, mostly what was coming down was the buildings that were, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, something like that. Um, Single family houses did collapse, but most of those houses that went, I think, were done with had fire problems. There was gas lines in the street that were carrying um, fuel for lighting and stuff like that, and they were causing fires. Um, None of the buildings were built to seismic standards in the, what was it, the '06, 1906 earthquake. So a lot of those buildings were probably built, you know, right after the Civil War, maybe before. So I don't know. When you look at it in '06, a lot of San Francisco wasn't really built up. What you see in San Francisco today, got all kinds of structures and housing, was grass back then. Not a whole lot of San Francisco was really occupied. When you go back even further, you know, like 1700 or 1800, early 1800, you know, just really the areas down by the water were the ones that were really just populated. Not, you see, because the commerce was the water. They had the ships coming in and out. So near the where the ships would dock up, you had boarding houses, you had stores, you had bars, restaurants, clothing places, ship repair facilities, and, you know, places to buy materials that you would load on your ship before you took off, and, you know, things like that. Uh, and then the further away you got, the more is where the people were living and they had their houses. And, you know, they had people living up on Nob Hill. A lot of the now Nob Hill is not a big walk to the water. The top of Nob Hill, you know, I've walked it many times down to the water. It would take you uh, going downhill, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, depending how fast you walk. That's with sidewalks. Oh, maybe it would take you 45 minutes. I'm thinking to Market Street, maybe 45 minutes or something. Without maybe an hour walk, I mean, at the most. But they weren't walking. These people had coaches, you know, they had horses, and they had horses dragging, you know, wagons and things like that. So, um, you know, they liked living up on Nob Hill because you would see all around you. You could see far away, see all the water, and it was pretty. Uh, so apparently that was a popular place. When it got popular, I don't know. It was popular in the, you know, like the 18, you know, post Civil War, around that area. It got real popular. The railroad barons that were doing price fixing all moved to Nob Hill, and they lived, you know, within a few hundred meters of each other. Um, the earthquake took care of a lot of their houses, but they had nice high houses up there. And um, today, you look at Nob Hill, you've got the Mark Twain, no, not the Mark Twain, the Mark something hotel. And then across the street, you have the Fairmont Hotel. Then you have up the street a small, very pricey niche hotel that used to be some rich person's home. It was a thin house, not very broad, but it went up a few floors. It's a gourmet hotel, and you have a big church there, Catholic church. You have a little park area there. Uh, you got some other structures that are housing. So there's a flat area at the top of Nob Hill, and that's the prime real estate, and that's California Street is the main street there, and then you go shift off California Street by 1 or 2 blocks. It's still sort of flat, and they have very expensive condos there that the rich and famous move into. Some of them are newer, like they were built in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, and some of them are rather old, so I guess they were built after '06 earthquake. And they're very stately, and that's where a lot of the rich and the rich people move to. They live there. In San Francisco, they have, condos where they basically will get a whole floor of a condo or a half a floor, something like that. So you get off the elevator, and there's two apartments, and they have, doors that are, secure and metal and everything like that. So you got to ring the bell to try to get in. If you got the whole floor, what happens is the elevator stops at the floor, and you see what looks like an apartment door. Generally, it's a metal door, and you got a place to put 1 or 2 keys in to open the locks, and you got a peephole. So, usually the way the elevator works is you need the key. If you want to go, let's say you've got your whole apartment on floor 16, you can't ring 16 in the elevator. It won't go up to 16, okay? You have to put a key in, a special key, turn it, and then you can push, and the elevator will take you up to 16. And then when you get to 16, you could ring the bell, and your maid or servant comes, and they see you, and they let you in, or you take the key, open the lock, or 2 keys, and open the locks, and then you walk in to your own house, and then shut the door. Now, they usually have a servant's elevator that operates in a similar fashion. I lived in a place like this in another country. I had the keyed elevator for the floor. I had the whole floor. And you have a staircase. That a staircase you can't block access to. But you put a big secure door there, and people can't get in. That's what you can do. So one time our dog got in the service elevator and went for a ride, and got off in somebody else's house who had a Malibu. And he went for a visit in their, he got off, he didn't get in their house because they didn't have he got off on the floor or something, I don't know, but he came back up, nothing came of it, but the jerk shouldn't have done that, he didn't understand. So you would, when people came to your apartment, usually the guy downstairs, the doorman, would, call you or something like that, and you would, can't remember how you got him to come up to the floor. you would call I remember how you did it. He'd let you know somebody was there, or they would call you on the cell phone, and then you push your elevator button in the apartment, and the elevator would come up to you with that minute, as if you were calling for an empty elevator because you wanted to go down. That sort of thing. That's what it was. I remember. Yeah, it's been many years, but it's sort of impressive. But it's no big deal. It's not a great. So anyway, yeah, that's the Nog Hill story. So back to Trump. So what are we gonna see with the Donald? Well, his plan is all wrong. Okay, and he's not going to get the results from Iran he thinks he's going to get, or he hopes he's going to get. The only thing he really has got left to do is try to shut the Iranian missile cities down, and that's going to be painful. The Iranians are not going to be very quick to back off on the closure. Well, it's not really a closure. It's them controlling the Persian Gulf and charging tolls. They're not going to give up on that. They think they can get away with it. They know Netanyahu's not going to do beans about that. And they're right about that. And they don't know if Trump really has got the guts. They are aware that Trump may attack them for 2 weeks and then stop again. They're aware of that. They don't care. They're also rather secure in their belief that Trump cannot bust up their missile cities. I don't think he can conventionally, but I think if he sends special forces in on the ground, number one, he can secure them. They come in on helicopters, and while they're there, there's 1 or 2 dozen jet fighters in the sky constantly. Okay, probably 2 dozen, constantly up there. Okay, and there's all sorts of surveillance drones and surveillance aircraft watching for any troops moving to them. If they see any troop movement with tanks or anything else coming towards the special forces at the missile cities, they blow it up. Okay? The downside is, can the missile cities fire? Can one missile city fire at another missile city when the American special forces are outside trying to destroy that missile city? Yes, because their own missiles aren't going to hurt them either, but it will get rid of the Americans. That's the big problem with this whole thing. And it's back to the same nonsense. As long as they got the missile cities, you got a problem. Okay? So while Trump could probably disable the missile cities with special forces a number of different ways, their vulnerabilities are they have a generator underground that's going to create electricity for lighting, air ventilation, sinks, toilets, communications, moving missiles around, equipment, everything, right? And that's not going to be tied to it might be running off the normal grid now. But when the normal grid, why wouldn't it be? But when the normal grid goes down, then it switches right over to the generator, and the generator kicks on. And when the generator kicks on, you have exhaust gases. So you have to set up a system like a muffler on a car, where the motor for the generator has an exhaust pipe that goes into ductwork, carries the exhaust up, and it dumps outside the missile city so they don't poison themselves with toxic fumes. So you send special forces over there, they see where that pipe is, and they could just drop a few hand grenades down the pipe, and you're going to cause a clogging of that pipe, I'm rather sure. But if you put, 2 pounds of high explosive in there, you get a much nicer effect. Okay? Now comes the next air duct, and that's to suck air in. They'll have a big fan, like a 6 or 8 or 12-foot fan turning, powered by the generator, creating a draw and sucking air in from a tube or ductwork out at the surface. So all the special forces have to do is clog that up. Drop bombs in it and just shut it from working. So now they're running out of air. They can't get more air, and they're running out of electricity. And that means that without air and electricity, it's not much of a threat. Unless they got air tanks, which is, I doubt it. They wouldn't have lighting. They couldn't move the missiles around, open the gate to the door to shoot the missiles out from underground. That's what Trump got to do, okay? If he's got some type of explosives that the American military machine has made, maybe instead of the mother of all bombs, which is 30 or something thousand pounds, he's created some 7,500 or 10,000 pound bombs that you could drop multiples of, and they burrow in, and then the next one finds the hole and burrows deeper and then deeper. So by the time you get to the fourth explosive, it blows the place up. I don't know if they could get something like that. Maybe they put a drill on the front of it and it goes, but you'd have to power that drill by a battery, so how strong could it possibly be? See what I'm saying? So you could do it. I'm sure you could do it with special forces. That's why he was bringing them over here. Now, if Iran puts men, women, and children over the missile cities to sit there, what would that do? Well, they would just tear gas them. That's all. Get rid of them with tear gas. That's all. They would tear gas them, put gas masks on, and escort them off the mountain, put them someplace where they could have armed guards contain them and then go about their business, and that's it. So after the Americans interfere with the exhaust, first you got to cut the grid so they have no electricity going to the missile cities. Okay, that's going to affect radar and everything else. So they're going to be turning on a massive amount of generators, and special forces needs to go around and destroy the generator, which it might only take them 30 minutes. Don't think they're going to be there for 9 hours. They land. Ski helicopters come and bring special equipment for them. They go to where the air goes in and out, right? The exhaust gases and the fresh air comes in, and they destroy those air ducts, and that's it. It's over. For good measure, could they take explosives and go to the door that opens up so lets them shoot the missiles out from inside the missile city? Yeah, but what are they going to do? They're going to have to put, massive explosives over there, so they may not bother with it, or they might, you know. So it can be done, okay? It can be done. Will Trump do it? While Trump's doing this, the existing missile cities are going to be launching constantly. Whatever's left of Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, they might leave alone, and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, they're going to blast the military bases there. They're going to blast their airports. So America can't make the planes leak. They can't take off and land. Then they're going to hit the oil refineries. Then they're going to hit the storage tanks, the ports and the piers. Then they're going to hit the oil wells. And they're going to create an economic crisis in the world that's going to be crippling. And then prophecy will get fulfilled. And they'll be gone. They'll have to leave the country, and it says they'll be scattered into every single nation. Now that's got to happen before Jeremiah 30:11, because if there's no nations left anymore, as per Jeremiah 30:11 and Jeremiah 46 verse 28, then what happens? Well, there's no scattering into all the nations of the world where the sword follows them and they get cut off. People are going to have tremendous hatred for them. So the Iranians are going to do something really bad on the way. What could they do that would be really bad? Well, hint, Zechariah 12, the enemies are riding horses. Oh, they're not riding vehicles. Oh, okay. Oil, gasoline, fuel shortage. Oh, the Iranians did something really wrong. They blew up all the oil in the Middle East. Oh. Does that mean there's no oil in the Middle East? Yeah. Does that mean there's no oil in the rest of the world? Not so, but that would, not necessarily, but it would explain why they're riding horses, and the enemy's riding horses in Zechariah 12, wouldn't it? I'd say it describes it better than saying the word for horse is sus, which could also mean a swallow or bird. And, it means they're flying in planes. And no. I think there's no fuel. God says he's going to destroy all the armies in the world. Now, I know you don't hear this in the buildings on Sunday from 9 to 11, but it's in your Bible. So if you're not believing your Bible, well, I don't know, there's a problem, So, and these are unfulfilled prophecies. So before we see Jeremiah 30:11, we got to see this thing with Iran. But, Syria went in 11 days. If you ask the experts, at the military think tanks and the universities, they would tell you, 9 months, 18 months, maybe somebody'd say 7 months or something. Not 11 days. Okay? So things can happen fast when God wants them fast. So you don't know the day, the hour. You're not going to get it right. Okay? You're only going to think you got a handle on it. You're not going to have a handle on it. Okay? So we watch and we wait. What else can we do? But we're supposed to watch. Read Jeremiah 30, verse 11, and read Jeremiah 46, verse 28 for yourselves. I want to take a look at the live stream real fast and make sure things are going, then we'll get into the Bible. Mark Hopkins Hotel. Thank you, thank you. They call it the top of the mark. That's what they call it, yeah. I was living in Concord at the time of the 89 quake, or was it 90 or 89, something like that. Uh, yeah, it was when that quake went off. I thought I was gonna die. I was sitting in my living room, and I was in Concord, which was maybe, I don't know, 12, 15, 18 miles from San Francisco across the water. So, of course, the whole San Francisco Bay, and then at least 12 miles or 15 miles, something like that. And there was a, I was in the living room, and there was a patio, and it went to the backyard, and we had this double, a large sliding glass door to the patio, and it had the aluminum frame. And I saw that door frame going like this. It was shifting inches to either side. My wife at the time was in the bathroom, and the water was sloshing up out of the toilet and hitting her. And then we had a swimming pool at that house, and it separated from where it sat in the water, and there was gaps like this, and the water was flying out of the pool. And I was a distance away. Okay, I don't know what it felt like in San Francisco, but it would have felt a lot stronger than it did going across all the water to where we were. There was a freeway down like where Upper Market Street was, and it broke. I mean, it broke. Streets broke. Oil was coming up. The gas was leaking. There were fires. Um, the Bay Bridge broke. If I remember, the top layer broke and landed on the bottom layer. There was a very small amount of people that got stuck there, and that was a pretty big bridge, and that was not an old bridge. I think they built that after the '06 quake. Uh, it connected from San Francisco to Treasure Island, and then it went to, I think it was Emeryville, near Oakland, Berkeley. The bridge landed in between Berkeley and Oakland. It had the bottom layer went from San Francisco to the Oakland Berkeley side, and the top layer went from Oakland Berkeley side into San Francisco. So when you were in the lower level, you didn't really have much of a view, and when you were in the upper level, you had a fantastic view. It was quite a bridge. Nothing happened to the Golden Gate Bridge, which may have been older than the Bay Bridge. That worked fine, but that was a much smaller, less lesser bridge. It was rather small. It was one level for starters, and I think it was 2 lanes each direction. I don't think it was 3 lanes each direction. It's been decades since I was on the thing, but I think it was 2 lanes each direction, something like that. It wasn't a very big bridge, not at all, and it was fine. The San Mateo Bridge, which was a very unusual bridge, that thing was very long, a few miles, and it was very low. At some points, it looked like it was just, 15, 20 feet over the water. I mean, it was really close to the water. really close. And I think that was just 2 lanes each direction. Um, that was a weird one, a very low bridge. So the only bridges in the area that I remember that really got it was the Bay Bridge, which was a very, very big bridge. Now, if you want to see a big bridge, the George Washington Bridge is the biggest of the bridges that I could remember being on. Now, I've been on bridges that are very high. I'm not talking about that wide for the amount of traffic they can cover. The George Washington Bridge between New Jersey and New York is really wide. It must be 10 lanes or some crazy thing like that. It's really quite a lot. Um, but I think if you added up the Bay Bridge lanes and you put them next to each other, you would probably exceed the George Washington Bridge when I think about it, or at least match it. So, yeah, earthquakes when they get up there, you know. Now, we have not been seeing earthquakes in the 8s, let alone the 9s. Now, when you start seeing them get up way up there, the forests start falling. The trees in the forest get uprooted. Okay? The modern buildings, the high rises, they put them on rollers. Rollers is what it sounds like, a roller. And the buildings rock and sway with the earthquake. And they're scary as all get up. I was working in a San Francisco high rise on Pine Street, and it was in the this was before the before the big quake of '89. Was it? No, it wasn't. Maybe it was. Well, it wasn't. I was not working there when the big quake came. I know that. Okay, before the big quake. There was a couple of earthquakes that were pretty good size, like 5s, you know, maybe high 5 or something like that. And the building would start rocking because it was built on rollers. It was a modern building. You couldn't open the windows, and it had great big glass walls and windows. It had a beautiful view. What was the problem with this thing? It was scary as all get up because it would start rolling and you would start thinking it wasn't big enough quake for you to start falling down and sliding across the floor. But if it was a big quake, the glass would probably break. Although it's architectural glass, I'm pretty sure it would break. And you would just slide across the floor, out the open window, and fall to your death. That didn't happen in '06 because they didn't have architectural glass. So I'm rather certain there's a point when architectural glass breaks. What Japan does is they build their buildings to tolerate an 8.0 quake, and I believe that's what California was doing. They were the seismic buildings would take about an 8. If you're going to try to build it to take an 8.7, the measures you're going to have to go through would be insane. Nobody could afford to do that. And if you were going to try to make your building last through a 9.3 or something, which things like this have happened in history, you would never be able to get there. I don't think there is anything that's going to stop an 8.7 or, the buildings, the rollers are just going to go to the point of extremity and then the building will collapse over. That's all. So a 35 or a 65-story building will roll a little bit and then boom, it goes too far, it falls apart. That's what will happen. It'll be horrific. Horrific. The tsunamis would be, I don't know how bad they would be. Usually you see these tsunamis, they might go in a half a mile or something like that, or a quarter of a mile. with a big flood, I don't even think they go more than, I mean, maybe a half a mile, 10 blocks, maybe. I don't know. But I mean, if you had an earthquake that was an 8.7 or a 9, that tsunami might go in, you know, 3 miles. Seeing a tsunami with a 300-foot wave that goes in many miles, I don't think it's a realistic picture. Okay. Um, if you had a tsunami that was even a 9.6, let's say, or something like that, I think the wave might get up to 50, 60 feet, and it might go 2, 3 miles inland or something. See, a wave on dry land dissipates very quickly. It spreads out and it loses its impetus. It doesn't keep going because it can't get the concrete in the ground to move like water would move and continue the wave. It can't continue it. So I mean, I don't even think you'd get 2 or 3 miles. You might get a mile and a half, or something like that. I don't know. But you would have a lot of damage, you know. Now it says at the end of Daughter of Babylon, the waves wash over the whole place. Now that's to put the fires out, I assume, because he says he'll kindle fires in and around the cities. So I imagine when it's all over and the enemy that did all the looting and pillaging has left, and they killed everybody that didn't leave before, then the water comes in and puts all the fires out. Otherwise, it would just smolder away for perpetuity, and the animals couldn't live there. And I imagine that could be a tsunami, or because it doesn't say rain, you know, he could say, I'll open the skies and put the fires out, you know, and he could do that in, you know, one day of rain or less even, you know. But he talks about the waves coming. So is that from a tsunami? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. Does God need a tsunami to make the waves come? No, because he tells the waves when to stop. He tells us that in the Word. He tells us when the wave, you know, he tells them this is as far as you go. So it just tells them to go further. So it doesn't mean there's a tsunami. It doesn't mean there's an 1,800-foot wave coming. It just tells it to keep going, not stop at the beach, just keep going, and it gets it to go. So it could just be, a 6 or 8 or 10-foot wave that just goes across, America. It could comes in from different sides, and that's it. And it just washes everything, puts all the fires out. Don't know much else. He could also do it with a 2-foot wave. 2 feet of water is going to put fires out real good, Yeah. Don't know. I don't know, guys. There's a lot of details that we're not given. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go. Let me take a break for a minute, and then we're going to go through Romans 6 and 7 with the translations. Okay? And I'll be right back. world can last like this another 6 months, the changes they're going to make in artificial intelligence are going to be amazing because they keep competing with each other. They don't sell to you, they give you use by the month. So what happens is you pay for it and you're month to month. So anytime you want to cancel, you cancel. So a better one comes out and the people cancel. And then when somebody gets a better one than that, then they cancel. So they have, rough competition. Now, they don't want to sell it to you outright. It's, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but when they come out with ChatGPT 5.6, which is already out, not fully out, but out, it's going to be the way it thinks and reasons, and it's going to be quite something. And I don't know, I guess within the next 2 or 3 weeks, most people will be able to get access to it. I think if you already have ChatGPT, they'll just, you'll just get it an update automatically on it, I think. Okay. Where am I? I gotta make sure I know where I'm at. Chapter 6 of Romans. Okay. So I'm gonna mostly read from Salkinson's Hebrew New Testament, which is translated into English using secular translations, nothing to do with the church world. And also Delitzsch's Hebrew New Testament, which he's sort of tied to the church world, and we're going to translate that also. So they basically reconstructed the New Testament back in Hebrew. It's replacement theology to think it was originally done in Greek. It wasn't. It was done in Hebrew. That was their language. And we're using the Septuagint as a guideline, to take the Greek New Testament. They took the Greek word in the New Testament, tried to find that same word in the Septuagint, which they did. Then they looked in the Hebrew Old Testament to see what word in Hebrew the Greek word in the Septuagint replaced, and then they took the Hebrew word and rebuilt the New Testament that way. So it's pretty good. So I'm kind of reverse translating it, but not really, because I'm getting AI to put it into English using secular guidelines. Okay? So Romans 6 verse 1. What shall we say then? Shall we remain in transgression so that grace may increase? And Delitzsch says, shall we persist in sin so that favor may multiply? Favor is not. Grace is much better. Okay, so I generally do Salkinson, and when relevant, I use Delitzsch also. I bring that in there. Okay, you'll find this is way more insightful and clear than any of the English translations you've come across. Far from, unless you're going to come across ones that are phony baloney like the Living Bible, and they just make this stuff up. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay. For from, okay, far from it, okay, we who died to wickedness, now can we live in it any longer? So Delitzsch says absolutely not. We who died to sin, how can we still live in it? You see, that's why they're saying the believers don't continue in sin. Okay? How can we live it in any longer? Okay, verse 3. Or are you ignorant that all of us who were immersed is baptized, okay? Immersed into Messiah Yeshua through baptism, water baptism. Immersed into Messiah Yeshua were immersed into his death. Okay? Spiritually, but that's spiritually is the spiritual stuff is heavier and more weighty than the flesh. Okay? The flesh decays and goes away. Spiritual stuff doesn't. Okay, let's keep going. For we were buried with him by immersion into death, so that as Mashiach or Messiah was raised from the dead by the glory of his Father, it was the glory of God of Israel that raised Yeshua. So we also should walk in a new life. So we walk in, David says we too should walk in a new quality of life. Salkinson says a new life. They're both pretty helpful. So we don't have the sin in our new life. Is that making sense? It should. For if we have been planted together with him in the likeness of his death, Delich says it a little differently. For if we have been fused together with him in the likeness of his death, we will definitely also share in his resurrection. And Delich says, we will certainly also be unified in his resurrection. And the next phase of this happens when he appears in the clouds, and you change and you start emanating forth light, and you have the everlasting life. You're like young again. You jump out of the stall like a baby calf. Because when you see him, you shall be like him. 1 John 3:2. Combine that with John 6:40. Okay. When you see him and you're a believer, you get changed. You get everlasting life. Okay. Now in verse 6. For we know this, that our old man was executed with him. That's your old flesh body and doing all the bad stuff. The lying and the cussing and the drinking or the boozing and the this and the that, whatever you were into. Executed with him so that the body of sin might be abolished. Okay, that's your old sinful ways. Was executed on the stake with him. That's Delich. So that executed on the stake with him, that our old man was executed with him. Notice Delich says stake, not cross. That the body of sin might be neutralized. I like that. So that the body of sin might be abolished. You still have a flesh body. The neutralized is kind of nice because it doesn't do anything bad. It's like when they neutralize a terrorist, it's dead. Maybe they got that from the New Testament or something. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's in the Old Testament in Hebrew and I never knew it. I missed it. I don't know. To the end that we should no longer serve wickedness. And though it says neutralized, leaving us no longer enslaved to sin. But Salkinson says no longer serves wickedness. Wickedness and sin is pretty similar. So that's why you're not going out and doing the sin, because you're in Yeshua. You got saved. You're immersed in his death. You understand now? Okay. Verse 7. Romans 6, verse 7. For he who is dead is set free from transgression. Delich. For anyone who has died is vindicated from sin, or free, vindicated, free, set free from sin. You don't have to sin anymore. The sinners, the unbelievers, they have to sin. You don't have to. And if we are dead with Mashiach, we believe that we will also live with him. Yes. That will manifest initially in New Jerusalem, then in heaven forever. Verse 9. Knowing that Mashiach, since he rose from the dead, dies no more dies no more. It's selected unto man to die only once. Yeshua died. Delich says, knowing that Mashiach, having been raised from the dead, does not die again. He rose from the dead and dies no more in Salkinson. Death has no more dominion over him because he's no longer has a date with death. Everybody else has a date with death at some point. Not him. He did it already. For in that he died to sin once. Not in that he lives, but I'm sorry, he died to sin once, but in that he lives to God. And then Delich says, but the life he lives to God. Okay? That's how we need to be and should be and are. Likewise, you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to wickedness or sin, but alive to God through Messiah Yeshua. That's right. He's the one that gave you right standing with God. The work he did on the stake. That's where you get your righteousness from him. Not from the law, not from Moses' law, not from what you eat, not from what you do or say, from Yeshua, from what he did. Do not let sin rule in your dying body. Yes, your body is dying. So that the everlasting life body won't be dying like this. So that you obey its desires. The body kind of runs you. It tries to. Neither yield your limbs as weapons of injustice to transgression. Delich says, do not volunteer your body parts to sin as tools for injustice, but yield yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your limbs as weapons of justice to God. It's different when you read it like this, isn't it? It's much nicer. Verse 14, for wickedness shall not rule over you, for you are not under law, but under grace. The works of the law never get you there. The works that Yeshua did for you on the stake get you there. And when you start going back, oh, I got to follow Moses' law here and there, you're diminishing the work he did. Because you're again going back with works. I got to eat this. I got to do this. I got to do that. You're going back to works. But the works never got you there. So why? 15. What then? Shall we transgress because we are not under law, but under grace? Far from it. Transgress. You know, that doesn't mean you're not doing the works of the law, because if you're going to go back and say, I have to do the works of the law or I'm transgressing, you're saying my works are responsible for my salvation, and you downplaying Yeshua giving his life for you. But there are works you got to pay attention to. You don't go to a prostitute and re-crucify Yeshua. You don't go murder. You don't go play with your flesh and get drunk or shoot heroin and all that, you know. Do you not know that to whom you yield yourselves as servants to obey, you are his servants, whom you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to justice. Justice means you're going to get judged in a favorable way and get your rewards at the judgment. Justice, judgment, got the connection. Verse 17, but God be thanked that you were servants of wickedness, but you obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered to you, being then made free from transgression, you became servants of justice. I speak in human terms because of the weakness of your flesh. For as you yielded your limbs as servants to uncleanness and to iniquity, resulting in iniquity, even so now yield your limbs as servants to justice, resulting in holiness. For when you were servants of wickedness, you were free from justice. What fruit did you have then in those things of which you are now ashamed? What kind of fruit were you bearing? You're ashamed of what you used to do. We all are. For the end of those things is death. Delich says the final outcome of those things is death. Yeah, they die. But now being made free from transgression, and you're no longer a slave to sin. That's what he's saying. You're free. You're not a slave. You're not a slave to transgression or not a slave to sin. You're freed. You're a slave that's been freed from sin or transgression because of the work that Yeshua did on the stake, not because of you following Moses' law. If you break one part of the law, you break it all. And nobody can follow Moses' law for 2,000 years or so because there's no temple, there's no offerings, no sacrifice, no priesthood. It's impossible. So you're breaking all the law. Having become a servant to God, you have your fruit resulting in holiness, and the end is everlasting life. Amen. For the reward of sin is death. Yep. But the gift of God is eternal life through Mashiach, or Messiah, Yeshua, our Lord. You get eternal life through him. But it says enduring life in Messiah, in Delich. So you have everlasting life, which is not eternal life. But when you get into New Jerusalem and there's no death, you obviously have immortality because there's no death. Okay? Now, before we do Romans 7, I want to share a couple of things here. This is some of the things that happen when you get old. And I mean, you're no longer in your 60s, you're old. When you're in your 50s, you're not old. And you really get to know a lot more about what's going on and what you should do and not do. And when you're in your later 40s, 50s, you start really understanding stuff more. Then in your late 60s, your body starts going. You know people, okay, now I know people, they're dead. Lots of people are dead, okay? So I look back and he spent a lot of his time, being a doctor. Some bunch of doctors in my family. He spent a lot of time being a doctor, in the hospital, doing surgeries, meeting patients, taking a vacation for 2 weeks a year, plus maybe Christmas and Thanksgiving, working, saving money, nice house, nice cars, nice clothes, and working. Where did it get him? What happened? He got old. Heart problem, this problem, that problem, couldn't work. Had to, retire, and just sit around. And the early days of retirement, you're traveling and you're visiting, and then it starts tapering down and it gets harder and harder to travel, and you start thinking you don't want to travel, then you stay home more. And I don't know what it's like for people in America. They get old. How do they go out of the house at night? People just hit them upside the head, or how do they go out, You don't really have that problem in Israel, but I guess in a lot of other countries you do. So they, I look at what they did nothing. And, when they died, the angels take them to the bad place. Or they get transported to the bad place, however they get there. But they go to the bad place, the pit. They don't go to the good place because they didn't do anything. Their works get burned up. They got nothing. Being a doctor and helping people, and you're making a lot of money along the way, and you're trying to heal them of diseases by cutting body parts out and giving them chemicals and stuff like that, that ain't getting you anywhere, okay? Other people have a job. They work, I knew a guy, he was a really nice guy. He worked for, I think it was Continental Can or American Can. His name was Bert. I used to know him. He used to take me to lunch, and he was at the end of his career working for them. He went in at, I think he worked for them at the end of World War II, and he put in probably 25 years or 30 years, and he was going to get his pension, and then he gets Social Security, and he was a standard, he paid the house off, and so, okay, so he's 60 something, and he retires, and then what does he do? Nothing. That work that he did was making some Satan bot owned company richer. It doesn't register as good fruit. Did he have a nice life? Yeah. Was he in jail or no? Was he in the hospital all the time? Probably not. He wasn't doing anything that bad. He went to work, he did his job, he went home, he didn't cheat on his wife, and raised a kid or two, and but it's not good fruit. It doesn't count as good fruit. What did he do for the kingdom? Nothing. I know other people that just went through life sinning. Were they Satan bots? Not necessarily so at all. They just went through life sinning because they loved sin. They weren't doing spells and incantations as they didn't know how to. They didn't know about that. They didn't believe in Satan. They didn't believe in God. They believed in lying, cheating, stealing, scamming, frauding. And, that's what they did, and they just racked up money. And, where did that get them? Well, nowhere. What about the people all they care about is their spouse and their family? The same thing. Where's the good fruit? I've seen people, I knew this guy, he was a customer of mine when I was in the paper business in San Francisco. He must have been 75 to 80 years old. He was supplying movie theaters with popcorn. He was shipping to Hawaii from San Francisco. He probably used to spend a lot of time in Hawaii. Maybe he lived there half the time or something like that. And he was getting popcorn and the buckets and the cardboard containers for the popcorn and the soda, the wax paper soda things to put the soda in, and the straws, the cardboard things you'd put the frankfurters in. You'd have to think, whoa, he would also give him toilet paper for the movie theater and towels, paper towels. I have to think of all the other things. We were selling food service disposable paper, plastic, aluminum, and stuff like that, goods. And he had the movie theaters in Hawaii were very friendly with him because he had a long history with them. And he grew old. He was old and frail. He had his business. It was run down. It was in downtown San Francisco. He had a secretary there, and her hobby, she never got married. Her hobby was tattooing dogs. They didn't have chips then. So if the dog ran away, they could find the tattoo. I don't remember where she put it in. Maybe on the ear or something, I don't remember. And they would have like a name and a phone number or something like that for the dog, I guess. And he would, I'd see him buying flowers to give to his wife and stuff like that. So he was probably, he was at the latter end of his days, and he knew it, and his wife probably was also. And he was going to be nice to her and all that. And am I saying that this is bad fruit? No, it's not necessarily bad fruit, but I don't think this guy knew the Lord from a hole in the wall. And it was, all he knew was to keep working. He never retired. He probably just dropped dead in the store, but I don't know. I had a falling out with him over something. He called me up and had me come down there, and he says, "I'm going to teach you a lesson that you're probably never going to forget." And he did. And he said to me, "A bad customer is better than no customer." And we're done. And I remember that's been many, many years ago. I still remember that. He was doing something and I couldn't keep doing it with him, and then he wouldn't buy from me anymore. You know, there were competitors he could buy from. He was buying the stuff, putting it on ships and sending it to Hawaii. You know, as long as they stagger it, you know, weeks in advance, they wouldn't run out. I don't think you were able to buy a lot of that stuff from Hawaii. If you could, it would have been, well, my company had a branch in Hawaii. Uh, so anyway, that's what happened. And, you know, him and his wife, let's say they were in love and everything was great. And how does that end? I'll tell you how it ends. In very rare cases, do the both of them die? Okay? Very rare. I know a story of two people. They were old. They were high 80s, I think. And they were in bad shape. They were, you know, wheelchair bound and all that. So they took a cruise. And they were basically, they got themselves a suite, I believe. They had a lot of money, and they um, laid in the bed looking out the window with the balcony doors open in the ocean air. They didn't go on the tours. They didn't run around the boat. That's all they did. And they were happy. And they went home, you know. Maybe they traveled around inside the boat. I don't know. They probably did. They had wheelchairs, so. Um, you know, but these people, that's not good fruit. I mean, you're not supposed to have a fight with your spouse and not get along. That's bad fruit. But it's not enough. It doesn't do it. You know, you're not here to entertain your spouse, and just because you did that, you're going to go to heaven. What about you and God? You understand? So the spouse stuff is nice, but it doesn't cut it. So you see these people, they're dedicated to their wife, and they, you know, one of them's going to die before the other. Then what happens? You understand? The odds are great one's going to die before the other. And then what happens to the other one? Well, they might go for a few years. They might die. Or they might go for years, and, you know, they just get used to being by themselves and take care of themselves. Others have issues where that no longer works. So they move into a home. And I don't know how long they live in the home. They have a thing called assisted living where people don't love it too much, but they have an apartment, right? They get rid of their house, they get rid of their possessions, they save some of the stuff, some of their furniture, so they put it in the apartment in assisted living, and that gives them a nice feeling because they have their dresser, they have their bed, they have their TV, they have a table, and you know but they don't have much room. They generally have a one bedroom, and they have a living room, and they have a kitchen and a dining area and a balcony, and that's usually what they have. So they might have 700 square feet, 600, 500, not much. Um, and with assisted living, the nurse will come around however many times a day and administer medicine. So they make sure when your medicine runs low, they get a hold of the doctor and they get refills. Okay? If you need something from the doctor, they have doctors come to the facility uh, usually every day or maybe every other day, depending on the size. So they just book you with the doctor. If you need to go to the dentist, sometimes I have a dentist. If it's Some of these retirement communities can be pretty big, and they could have a dentist open right up in the place, or they might arrange transportation for you to a dentist or whatever, right? And if you need help cleaning the house, you no longer can clean, they'll have somebody, you're going to pay for it, that'll come up there and clean. Um, if you lose your ability for cooking, then they can do from their kitchen, they'll bring the meals to you, or you could go eat in their kitchen. And if it gets bad, then you're no longer in assisted living. You have to go get a room, and you're in a bed, and then it's more like you got nurses around you and stuff like that. But the assisted, they go to a, if they can afford it, they go to a retirement community, and they get an apartment, and there's swimming pools, and there's gyms, and they exercise, they do field trips, and people go sit around outside and talk, and they'll have a barbecue, and they'll put a show on, and they'll do this and that, and the people are very socialized. They go visit with each other, and they're not building up any good fruit. They're just passing time, okay? And people hang on. They don't want to die. They hang on because they don't know what to expect, and they just keep hanging on. And even when they're in pain, they just hang on because they don't know what's going to happen. But they're not the elect. They don't know what will happen. So, you see people, they take their life and they make their careers. And what happens to them? Eventually it's over and everybody forgets about them. I look back and I remember people that were owning and running businesses in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're gone. And their businesses, and nobody even remembers them or pays attention to them. It's all gone. So you get older and all the people you knew are no longer important. They don't do anything. If they're still alive, they're just vegetating. They might go visit their kids and this and that. Look, I've seen people that, are old and they are in reasonably decent, good physical condition. They're, 75, 80 years old, 83, and they can go jogging or exercise walking, and they might go swimming. They drive. They eat out. They cook. And they go like that. And then what? They die. Or they get sick and they can't do it anymore. Or they get ill. It doesn't go anywhere. Your body falls apart. And when you cater to the flesh and the flesh falls apart, you got nothing left. The spirit never falls apart. And when you cater to the spirit, you build good fruit, you're in good shape. But you're not in good shape when you're catering to the flesh. Look, a lot of wealthy people now, I don't know what they take, human growth hormones, steroids, or other stuff. I don't know what they take. But they're living to their high 90s. But they don't live a good life. They get old and they're deteriorated and stuff is bad, and they're basically living, they're millionaires, they got nurses and stuff like that. So when they're really rich, what they do is they got their mansion and they start moving equipment in. They get a hospital bed. They get monitoring equipment. And then they hire an attendant, and then the attendant transitions to a registered nurse. So they have registered nurses that come in shifts, or maybe the nurse stays there for 3 days and then she takes off, and then another one comes for 3 days, and they rotate like that. And they take care of whatever the person needs, administering medicine, checking them for the doctor, and then on top of that they'll have a cook so they can prepare healthy meals, right? They'll have a physical therapist or someone maybe helps them with some limited exercise. They'll have maids. They'll have groundskeepers. So depending, they can go uh, sit out by the pool in the sun. Uh, maybe they could even go swimming. They have it better than poor people do that are without, that have health problems. They could artificially shore stuff up, okay? If they want to take a trip, they can get themselves a big van with a driver, and the van has a big reclining chair so they could lean back almost all the way, and it'll have a bathroom in there, and they got plenty of room, and they could just sit there in that chair and lean back. And if they want to take a trip on a plane, they'll charter a plane, and they got their own plane. They don't have to worry. The car drives them up right to the runway. They get out of the car. They go up the steps into the plane, and then they sit down, and the plane takes off. And when they arrive, they have another car meet them right at the plane. They have things much easier and better, but they're still, they're doing nothing. What are they doing? They're spending their life catering to the flesh. They want jewelry. They want their flesh in a big house. They want their flesh in a big car. They want their flesh in expensive clothes. They want their flesh smelling with perfume and cologne. It's all to the flesh, to the flesh, to the flesh, and pride. And it all deteriorates. And they don't know anything about what goes on in the world. All they know how to do is make money, and then when the money thing is over and they get old, they basically fall apart. They don't know what to do with themselves. And then you get people that are just involved with their spouse. You get other people that are just involved with their children. That's all they do is their children. It's a real problem in Israel. Everybody else can take a long walk on a short pier except my children. And they're just obsessed with their children. And that's in Israel, it's not a good thing. It's a problem you get. So you have to understand that when you're living for the flesh, you got no good fruit. And the tree that doesn't bear fruit gets cut down and thrown in the fire. And that's where these people wind up. That's all they got. And days are short. They don't get that either. I've seen this with women a lot. The women get if they're in like Hollywood or with the rich and famous, sometimes when they're teenagers, they get mature quick, so they're 18, 19, 20, 21. They don't have any real maturity. They have, phony maturity. They develop manners. They know how to have a dinner. They know how to meet people and shake hands and compliment them on their house and the dinner and all that. That's not really maturity. That's phony baloney. And then men usually take advantage of them because they're not real smart and they want to feed their flesh. And the man usually is older, not all the time, and he's got plenty of flesh food. He can take them on the yacht, take them on a plane, take them on vacations, buy them jewelry, buy them clothes, get them a nice apartment, get them a $10,000 dog or an expensive cat, and buy them furniture for $300,000-400,000 as long as they're going to let him have at their flesh, which they're more than happy to sell their flesh to. So it's the both of them living for the flesh. She wants to offer her flesh to get the wealth and the riches, and he wants to get her flesh in exchange for his wealth and riches. And the two of them have a compatible situation. And they're both going to hell in the handbasket because they're living to the flesh. But these women don't have it very long. When they're young, they're very, guys are running after them. That lasts even until their 30s. Most of these, billionaires and millionaires don't want to hear about it. Once she's more than 22, 23, they're done. They don't want to hear about it because they know about old age. Because with women aging, they've been through it. They're often on their second or third wife. They've been through it. Okay, so they're not interested in a 33-year-old because they know in a few years they're going to want to trade her in for another model. They're interested in a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old, maybe 22, 23, if they're exceptionally beautiful and talented, and they can get along with them. And they steal the best years of their life, and these young women don't understand that by the time they're about 36, 38, they're no longer competitive in this market. They have to drop into a different market when the guy dumps them, and generally the guy will dump them. He might send it down the road with a few $1,000,000 because he doesn't care. He has $3 or $4 billion. He doesn't care if he has to give a $10 or $15 million to get rid of her. That's the price for the game he plays, of continually having young, beautiful wives. He knows that's an expensive indulgence, and he doesn't want to go to court. He gives her 10 million. That doesn't work. 12, 15, 17. There's a price where she says okay, and then her lawyer makes sure she gets the money. He gets his cut. And, she gets a nice house, pays it off. She basically has nothing left to do, but she doesn't have any bills she has to worry about. And that's worth a lot to her. So she goes and she hits the plastic surgeon. She hits the gym. She takes the hormones. She eats right, and everything. And she'll find another guy, but it's not going to be the same kind of, super wealthy guy, and it happens fast. They don't usually even get 20 good years out of it. They get about 12, 15 years out of it, and then they're off the market. They're off the market with this billionaire, multi-millionaire crowd that wants to marry young, beautiful women. That's who they're off the market in. By the time they're 36, 35 years old, they're off the market. Okay? So they could go to another market and, be okay, but that's not dealing with the same wealthy people. That's something different. Okay? I gotta see what this is. I have no idea what this person's sending. Spam, man. Okay. So now they're out there and they're looking around for guys that are, 55, 60, 63, and they're 36, 35, 39. And he's got money, but he's not a billionaire. He might have himself, a little nest egg of 20, 30, 40 million dollars, enough to keep her. And she goes that route, And then usually what happens is he'll just grow old, and that'll be the end of that. And then she might wind up with some more money, and then she's, in her 50s, and then what does she do? I used to see these women. I had a friend who lived in Marina Del Rey, California, right where the boats are. He had a boat, and he was right on the water. And I used to see these women down there. He used to know the story with some of them. They were, 40s, 50s years old. They'd be riding bikes, exercising um, by themselves. They didn't have anybody anymore. The guy died. They married the guy. They were younger. The guy died, or he's in a home, and she's by herself. She's not trying to get married anymore. She knows she's old. She's just going to finish life at home in her spare time. She might have some kids. They might be close with her, they may not. So she moved into an apartment. She's got a 2-bedroom overlooking the water. She's got a Mercedes. She buys her clothes. She goes once a week to an expensive beautician, a beauty parlor. And she takes vacations, goes to the spa and, goes to yoga, goes to Pilates. And, so what? She keeps going until then what happens? She gets old and she has to go to a home, or, they get nowhere. But they don't think, they don't understand where they're going to wind up when they get old. They don't get it. Okay, now we'll do chapter 7. I think it'll fit in with this. Okay, Romans 7. Do you not know, my brothers, for I speak to men who know law, that the law has power over a man as long as he is alive, or as long as he lives. Delich says, or are you ignorant, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know law, that the law rules over a person only as long as he lives. For a woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. But if the husband dies, she is loosed from the law of her husband. So then, if while her husband lives, she is joined to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband is dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress though she be joined to another man. See, it's very specific. He's not telling us Moses' law in general, the law of the marriage, right? Okay, Yeshua didn't set you free from that. You can't run around, and play games with the marriage. I just wonder, since once the spouse is dead, they're free from the marriage, I wonder what happens with the dry bones. They come back, would they still be under the law of their marriage? I don't see how that possibly could be the case. So they would be single, and they may choose not to get married again. And they may choose to track down some of their children. And they're not going to get married again to each other. So this is weird. And they're obviously going to be, physically young again, because they're going to have the everlasting life, and they're going to be marrying people from our generation. Probably, I guess. These are the things you start to think about when you really study the scriptures, I guess. Not that I don't know if you could say I study them that much, but I have had a lot of decades with them, I guess. I don't know. Therefore, my brothers, You also have become dead to the law by the body of Mashiach, Messiah, Yeshua, that you should be joined to another, even to him who is raised from the dead. That's like Yeshua says, I never knew you, I knew you, right? Joined to another, even to him who is raised from the dead. Getting it? That we should bring forth fruit unto God, good fruit. For when we were in the flesh, the impulses of sins, impulses, you get an impulse. You know, I remember a guy I knew in the jail, I led him to the Lord and stuff like that, and he was telling me, well, he got out of the jail. And then I ran into him or something. He was telling me, you know, he says, oh, I went out that night. I had dancing feet. I had to go out, you know. Dancing feet. There's no such thing as dancing feet. You know, it's people justify sin. They say stuff like that. What he was saying is his feet, his flesh, wanted to go out and dance. So he gives in to the flesh. You see? For when we were in the flesh, the impulses of sins, which he had an impulse, he wanted to go out dancing. It was a bad thing with him. I believe he got into trouble or something. I can't remember the details, many years ago. Which were by the law, did work in our limbs to bring forth fruit unto death. Did work in our limbs, did work in our flesh body to bring forth fruit unto death. Well, to bear yield for death, Salkinson's Dellett says. So yeah, you bear bad fruit. The tree that has bad fruit gets cut down, thrown in the fire. But now we are delivered from the law, being dead to that wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the written word. What it says in Delitzsch is much clearer, the oldness of the letter. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Far from it. Nay, I had not, it says, well, Delitzsch says, absolutely not. I like that better. On the contrary, I would not have known sin except through the law, for I would not have known covetousness if the law had not said, you shall not covet. You see? So the Lord does teach us adultery, fornication, covetousness, things like that, right? Lying. Okay. Now I'm in verse 8. But sin, taking occasion by the commandment by the commandment, brought in me all manner of desire. Delitzsch might be a little nicer here, but sin, finding an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. It says, by the commandment wrought in me all manner of desire, for without the law sin was dead. So you wouldn't have known sin without the law. So that's why it says sin is dead. Okay. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, transgression revived and I died. But it says in Delitzsch, let's see, I was alive once apart from the law. There it is. That's better. Without the law, apart from the law is clearer. But when the commandment arrived, sin came alive and I died. So he's saying he was dead because he was without the law. Then he knew the law and he realized he was breaking the law. And that's he's reflecting in his past. That's what he's doing. And the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. For sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived it deceived me, and by it slew me. So he's saying sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it slew me. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good. Was then that which is good made death unto me? Far from it, but sin, that it might appear sin working death in me by that which is good, that transgression by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. So he's talking about the sin again, his acts of sin. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under transgression, or sold under, or Delitzsch says, sold under the control of sin. He's serving sin. He has to follow sin. See, the sinners need to sin. They like sinning, and they're dreaming and living for sin. Sin is their goal in life. The 21-year-old movie starlet wants to sell her body and marry an older fellow with millions and millions of dollars to get access to the money and feed her flesh, and he wants to give her the money to have access to her flesh. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not, but what I hate, that do I. Delitzsch says, for what I am doing, I do not understand. And he says, I hate, but I do the very thing I hate. See, that's the struggling with the flesh, okay? If then I do that which I would not, Dalit says, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. Salkinson says, if then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that it is good. How then it is no more I that do it, but transgression. I that do it, but transgression. Well, let's read Delich. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin living within me. See, it's a slave to the sin. When you start with the sin, you serve the sin. And that's why people can't stop doing sinful deeds. Getting drunk, getting stoned, fornicating, adultery, robbing, murder, whatever sins they're going to do, they can't stop. They keep doing the sins. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good thing. The flesh is fallen. Satan got that all messed up for us with Adam and Eve. Let everything reproduce after its own kind. So we're getting all the sin stuff in the flesh from Adam and Eve. For when you get the everlasting life and God puts the law in your inward part in your heart, now you don't really have Adam and Eve flesh anymore. You got something different. But you're not yet there. You're there when you get the spiritual body like Yeshua had when he rose from the dead and he went up to heaven. So after New Jerusalem, you're at the end of this. Okay, but we're changing you could call it a cycle. The 2,000-year punishment against Israel is going away. Okay, and Israel's going to be the head of all the nations. Okay. For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwells no good. No good thing. There's nothing good coming from the flesh. For to will is present with me. Desire. Delit says, for the desire. Okay. No good lives in me that is in my flesh. For the desire to do good is present with me. And Salkinson says, no good thing. For to will is present with me, to will to do good. But how to perform that which is good, I find not. And Delit says, for the capacity to perform it is not. Okay? So he wants to, but he doesn't have the ability to. For the good that I would do, for the good that I do, for I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I practice. That's Delich. Now we're in 20, verse 20. Romans 7, verse 20. Now if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but transgression which is sin, that dwelleth in me. Delit says, but sin living within me. See, because she's serving sin. Sin becomes your master. The more sin you do, the more place you give to the devil. And the devil tries to see to it that you start just immersing yourself in sin like his servants do. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present. I find that a law. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. When he wants to do good, he's saying the evil is there. The flesh is pulling. Come on, let's do evil. Let's get drunk. Let's get happy feet. Go to the bar and dance, you know. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. That's his spirit in my inner humanity, it says in Delich. The spirit is willing, but the flesh isn't, right? Okay. But I see another law in my limbs. That's the flesh, in the body parts, the limbs. Warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of transgression, to the rule of sin which is in my body. So the sin is dragging him into more sin, or staying in sin. Verse 24. Wretched man that I am, I who shall deliver me from the body of this death. That's your flesh. It's headed to death. I thank God through Mashiach Yeshua, or Yeshua HaMashiach, I would say, our Lord. So then with the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of transgression. So he's saying the mind wants to serve God, but the body wants to go the other way. They're having a combat. But when you see Yeshua and you have the everlasting flesh, they shall all know me from the least to the greatest. He puts the law in their heart and their inward parts, gives them a heart of flesh. So now can serve God much better. But there still comes a falling away, but you can serve God much better. So the hard part is coming to an end, which is running around with this flesh body and trying to serve the Lord and the Holy Spirit and Yeshua and not do the sins. Okay? It's hard. And that's why we're under grace. Okay. All right. So let me get a prayer for us. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray for me and my wife, all the true believers in our households. I pray for your peace, safety, protection, joy, calm, rest, shalom on us and in us. And I pray we have strength, stamina, and endurance. And I pray that we would have your healing and recuperative power flow through us. And I also pray for our animals and pets and us, that we would be safe, secure, and happy, healthy, and whole. And I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I pray for any of us that wants or needs another house or a place to live or a different dwelling, that they find it and they get a good deal and a good situation for it. Okay, not a bad situation. And I pray that for those that need a place to live, they find one quickly. And I pray for those of us that need work, we find work. Good work, enjoyable. For those of us that need clients and customers for a business, I pray that they find that, we find that. And I pray for us to all have adequate finances and then some. And I pray that we would all understand the scriptures better. I pray I can do better videos and will do better videos. And I pray that I can push this translation through better, get better at it, making these translations. And I submit this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And spiritual warfare. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I loose from off or out of me and my wife, true believers, and our families and households, that if any one of these people has an unclean spirit, it immediately departs from them, never returns to them again. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And if there's any witchcraft or sorcery targeting any of these people, it is now null and void and no value, no effect, shall never return, even in a similar fashion. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay. I didn't get anybody, well, somebody offered to help me in a small way, which was much appreciated with this endeavor with the podcast, and with YouTube, but I don't, the person needed help, and I don't know what kind of computer they would have. It wouldn't be, if I have to keep assisting, I can't do it. I don't have that time. So I need some people that want to get involved and bear good fruit. We just studied fruit. Bearing good fruit's very important. That has the ability to do this and would bear good fruit. And we could do the YouTube in different languages and podcasting and Shopify and other things, So I'm just waiting for somebody to help. If somebody is not helping, I don't know how I could do it. Pray that I'm going to get help. If I'm not going to get help, pray that God will arrange for me to have the money to hire people to do this work. Because I can put a few people to work doing this, 2 people probably working on social media, putting stuff like this up all the time. It would be worth it. So pray for that. Appreciate that. Pray that I do good with the, please, this is important, pray I do good, I have a good outcome with the public and private welfare system, we can call it. In Israel, there's 2 sides, and they work together, public and private. So pray I do good, trying to get in the system, which I shouldn't have much trouble. But pray that I get it done right. Appreciate that, that's important. What else? We got some packages coming. Pray that they arrive okay. Appreciate it. And okay, I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out. And get a hold of me if you want to get involved in this work I talked about with YouTube and the podcasts. My email address is israelgiving with the number 7 at gmail.com, and it's in the description box under the video. And thanks, guys. I hope you got something out of this. It's very hard to teach this, but to those that know, have been walking the walk, then you'll understand, I think. Okay, I'm out. Thank you.